Short reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Final lesson. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Krishna, there cannot be any question of your being offensive. That must be continuing from before. So there's a Puri Maharaj talking that he never offended anybody, you're never proud. Whatever he did was the blessing of Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. When Srila Prabhupada presented himself as Mahapatita, greatly fallen, Puri Maharaj did not accept it. You have saved millions of people around the world, he said, therefore there is no question of offences. But you should be called Mahapatita Pavana, the great saviour of the fallen. Prabhupada's disciples regarded Prabhupada's asking for his godbrother's forgiveness as a manifestation of his humility, but they were also puzzled. Certainly Prabhupada's godbrothers were sincere in saying Prabhupada had committed no offence. Whatever he had done for Krishna, but Srila Prabhupada was also sincere in asking for forgiveness. This was the beautiful gem of humility, to ask everyone for forgiveness. For the purpose of preaching, displaying this gem had not always been the most effective way to spread the merciful teachings of Lord Krishna in every town and village, but now it could be displayed in London and now in Vrindavan. Prabhupada was showing his disciples extra affection and gratitude without the reprimands usually necessary in training disciples. This attitude of complete humility was a symptom of the highest stage of devotional life. Srila Prabhupada had explained in his books that the Madhyamadikari, the second-class devotee, makes distinctions between the devotees, the innocent non-devotees and the demons, whereas the Mahabhagavat, or first-class devotee, sees everyone except himself as a servant of God. Sometimes, however, the Mahabhagavat desires to come down from the first-class platform to the second-class platform just to take up the most compassionate service of preaching Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada's disciples had all read of the Mahabhagavat stage in the scriptures, and now they were seeing it fully displayed. As Prabhupada referred to himself as the most fallen and asked for everyone's forgiveness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, entitled The History of the Life of a Jammu, Text 8. Not Text 8. 9. Sri Rajavacha Drishta Shutabhyam Yat Papam Drishta Shutabhyam Yat Papam Janan Api Atmano Ahitam Jananapyatmano Hitam Karoti Bhuyo Vivasha Karoti Bhuyo Vivasha Prayashchitam Hato Katam Prayashchitam Hato Katam Shirajuvacha Trista Shrutabhyam Yat Papam Jananapyatmano Hitam Karoti Bhuyo Vivasha Prayashchitam Hato Katam Shirajuvacha Trista Shrutabhyam Yat Papam Jananapyatmano Hitam Karoti Bhuyo Vivasha Prayashchitam Hato Katam. Please repeat. Okay.
Janan api atmano hitam karoti bhuyo vivasya prayaschitam atokatam
Mataji.
Shirajavacha Dristat Shichakrim Yapapam Jananapyatmanohitam Karutipuyo Vivasha Prayashchitam Atokitam.
Sorry. Shri Rajuvacha. Parikshit Maharaj replied, Drishta, by seeing, Shrutabhyam, also by hearing, from the scriptures or law books. Yat, since, Papam, sinful, criminal action. Janan, knowing, Api, although, Atmana, of itself, Ahitam, injurious, Karoti, he acts, Bhuya, again and again, Vivasha, unable to control himself, Prayashchitam, atonement, Ato, therefore, Katam, what is the value of? Translation. Maharaj Parikshit said, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general, and because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in the next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? Please repeat. Maharaj Parikshit said, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general, and because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in the next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? Prabhupada's purport. In some religious sects, a sinful man goes to a priest to confess his sinful acts and pay a fine, but then he again commits the same sins and returns to confess them again. This is the practice of a professional sinner. Parikshit Maharaj's observations indicate that even 5,000 years ago it was the practice of criminals to atone for their crimes, but then commit the same crimes again, as if forced to do so. Therefore, owing to his practical experience, Parikshit Maharaj saw that the process of repeatedly sinning and atoning is pointless. Regardless of how many times he is punished, one who is attached to sin's enjoyment will commit sinful acts again and again, until he is trained to refrain from enjoying his senses. The word vivasha is used herein, indicating that even one who does not want to commit sinful acts will be forced to do so by habit. Parikshit Maharaj therefore considered the process of atonement to have little value for saving one from sinful acts. In the following verse, he further explains his rejection of this process. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasma Shigirave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shrigirim Jinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Maharaj Parikshit said, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general, and because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in the next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? So, I think it's in the Bhajan Nitai Pada Kamala. Is it that one? Prabhupada gives the purport where he says that an animal can be tamed, even sometimes a snake can be tamed. In India, you can see this. Anyone ever seen this? Sometimes you see them playing a shanai, and the snake's going like this, comes out of the basket. You can see that. Once we were at Kusum Sarovar, and there was this, Prabhupada Vani and I were there, and these two young boys, I don't know whether they were supposed to be at school or whether they were skipping it or whether they didn't bother or whatever, but they were trying to make money from the devotional tourists by producing a snake from out of their pocket. He says, Ek Rupi Cobra Darshan. So he pulled it, and then we turned round, and then there's a snake in front of you. He's holding it up, he wants some money for giving the darshan. It happened a few times actually in that area. And we could see also the other time I seen personally was the young man was playing the flute and he was controlling the snake swimming in the water, making it come this way or that way by the melody he was playing. And he told me what he was doing, and it was happening. You can see it with my own eyes. So the ability to control, generally a snake is considered to be envious. Sometimes it's seen as a representation of envy. In different scriptures that is mentioned. But it says that even an envious snake can be tamed, but an envious human is worse than a snake. Because we have that freedom of choice, and sometimes we become proud of using our own choices. Sometimes we're very stubborn, so conditioned. But this is basically due to the desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. This is what it's all about. As long as we have to be, sometimes we don't think we're envious, But the fact that we're trying to enjoy separately from Krishna, we're quite happy to forget about Krishna, enjoy ourselves, means that we have envy. Simple as that. And the sooner we admit it and realise that, then the sooner we can deal with it. You know, if you're fighting an enemy in the dark and you can't see where they are, then but they can see you, then you've got not much chance. But if you can actually shed a little light on what is the enemy, what is my enemy here? So Arjuna asked Krishna, what is it one is impelled to act sinful acts as if by force? And what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samudbhava vidyanam ihavarinam. Correct. And the translation for that?
It is lust only, Arjuna. It is called the very simple enemy of this world, which burns like fire.
That's it. It's basically the eternal enemy of the soul. Now, it's not that the soul is forevermore going to have this eternal enemy to contend with, but it is our eternal in the sense that ever since we came into this material world and what brought us here, this is what we've surrendered to, this lust, thinking that we'll satisfy this desire and then I'll be peaceful, then I'll be happy. And after trying to satisfy our desires for so long and finally becoming frustrated with them, sometimes we decide, okay, I'll just merge with God. I'll just become an impersonalist. No matter what good relations, how much hard I try, let me just deny everything and give it all up. Nighty philosophy, not this, not that. But still, this is the last snare of Maya, Prabhupada says, because still they won't give up their envy of Krishna, that I am subordinate part and parcel. There's no escaping the fact, whether we like it or whether we're not. And if you don't like it, you just have to, as my mother should say, you can lump it all you like, but you're still going to have, it's a fact. Like it or lump it, but if you don't like it, then too bad, it's just it's a fact. Of course, people may challenge that fact, and the motivation to challenge that fact is their ignorance of the fact that they are trying to enjoy separately from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. So we come up with very elaborate philosophies and pseudosciences to deny the existence of God and thus distract people from getting the peace, distracting people from working together, worshipping together. You know, in any of the religions of the world, they're all advocating we should love God and that we're servants of God. So this atonement thing isn't going to change anything because it's not getting to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is still existing. If by eating sweets you get boils, and then you take medicine to get rid of the boils, but you keep on eating the sweets, then you're just going to get the boils coming back again, isn't it? Sometimes this is what happens. If you eat too many sweets, then you end up with boils, especially in hot countries. In fact, it used to be in ISKCON that devotees would get some big boils and it would be seen as a purification. It was a standard kind of thing. So even if we acknowledge our sins, the actions which we do which are wrong against scripture, or which are against even moral conduct, against the law, so one may admit that and be sorry for it, and maybe truly sorry, often sorry means sorry I got caught. Not so much necessarily sorry that I did it. Sometimes it is like sorry I did it, I was compelled to do this, I didn't want to do it, but I did it all the same. Felt like I had no choice. Seemed to be some stronger force. And of course, this is the effect of desire. It says a criminal has been punished, and they know that if they do it, they're likely going to get caught if they keep doing it, but they can't stop doing it, so they get punished again. So Prabhupada, back in the late 60s, I think it was, maybe early 70s, we can read in the Science of Self-Realization, Prabhupada was offering to the chief of police of Chicago, what was his name again? Mr. Mosley? No.
Mosley.
Mowgli from the Jungle Book. No, he was, whoever his name was, Prabhupada was offering, you give us facility, because he was saying, this process of sending them to jail and they're coming out and they're doing crimes again, it's not working. And the police was understanding, yeah, it's a fact, it's not working. They're coming back out, they're going to the crime university to learn how to do it even more. They're coming back out and becoming better at it. And Prabhupada said the problem is they're not getting purified. The desire to commit the crime is still there. So unless they can uproot that desire, he says, so you give us facility and we will rehabilitate all these people. But it never happened because obviously the powers that be would not take seriously to give such resources, and had they done, just see what kind of difference it could have made. But we are also living examples of, within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, many people came from all sorts of backgrounds, not even just criminal, but sinful backgrounds. And it's practically impossible, like we hear this verse often, Kali Dosha, and Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. So as soon as you're able to walk and talk, then you're doing something wrong. Even before that, you're being fed meat. And we don't even have a choice in the matter, practically. And as soon as we do have a choice, a chance to enjoy, we want to enjoy. And interesting, though, Prabhupada says this is the meaning of life, is to enjoy, but we do not know how to enjoy. It's like, I know how to enjoy. I just get my pay and I go down to the pub, or I go and do this or I do that. I enjoy in different ways. Yeah, but what they don't realise is how to enjoy without having any reaction coming back to you. How to enjoy means to enjoy with the Supreme Enjoyer. And Krishna wants that. It's not like he's having a private party and doesn't want us to come and there's only a very select guest list. Everyone's invited, but you have to qualify. That's all. And this lust simply means that we have a choice. Either we can lust after the material energy. Everyone follows my path in all respects, Krishna says. Krishna has given us the material energy to enjoy, and he's given the rules of the game. And if we don't abide by the rules, then punishment is there. And it's practically impossible to come into this material world, not break any of the rules, and then go back home to Godhead after it. Even we see the greatest of demigods like Lord Brahma, he made some quite big blunders, but still Krishna's mercy upon him helped him regain his consciousness of his actual identity, and therefore we have the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya. So even for a devotee who's trying to remember Krishna in the material world is difficult. But the Lord in Kali Yuga is so merciful that he says, just remember the holy names. Satatam Kirtayantamam, just always chant my names. Because Krishna is pure, when we associate with that pure, then we also become pure. This is our connection. It's made so simple for us. If we get totally bewildered, just get your hand in the bead bag and start chanting. And wherever your mind wanders, just bring it back to the holy name. Whatever difficulty you're going through, take shelter in the holy name and remain faithful to our founder Acharya, and then you can't go wrong. No matter what comes, if you just hold on to those things, then you won't go wrong. So this desire to enjoy is not foreign in the living entity, because we're meant to enjoy. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and as parts and parcels of Krishna, we have the capacity to enjoy as well. We have the desire to enjoy. But by trying to enjoy separately, it becomes lust. Our love of God turns into lust. So if we experience some lust, we can recognize this is love of God, which has gone wrong. Just like the milk. Milk is still milk, even when it's sour. But it's still milk, but it's not of the same quality. You can't use it in the same way. So therefore, in Krishna consciousness, we try to redirect our desires to serving Krishna and experiencing the happiness of that. Now, Prabhupada gives a very simple example. You like to eat nice foodstuffs. So even if you want to cook something that you like to eat, then you You cook it and you offer it to Krishna, and Krishna is kind, he leaves the remnants, and then we take that, and then it's called prasad. Of course, it has to be offerable, and Krishna mentions what can be offered. And then Krishna says, Yad kroshi yadashnasi yad jehosi dadasi yad yat. Can't remember the rest of it. Yad krishma madarpanam, is it?
Yattapasyasi kontraya tatkuru samadasana.
That's it. So whatever you do, whatever austerities you perform, whatever actions you do as an offering to me. So if we analyze our life, our daily life, then we can take stock of, am I doing this for Krishna? Am I doing this for me? And if I'm doing it for me, can I still do the same thing and do it for Krishna? Because often we don't have to change what we're doing externally, it's internally. It's what is my conscience of it. In the beginning, sadhana bhakti means, Prabhupada explained, he gives different definitions of sadhana. One is that sometimes we have to act as if by force. It's not as if by force, because nobody's keeping anybody captured here in the temple. Nobody, or even if you're living at home, nobody's keeping you captured in your home. You don't have to make your home a temple. You don't have to read Bhagavad Gita. You don't have to chant Hare Krishna. But we do it because we know it's good for us. We do it because we know it's right. And we do it because we know we want to get back connected with Krishna. And we believe in it and we experience it. But sometimes in the beginning, initially we make some intelligent decision. After all the tribulations and trials of the material world, we make some decision that this is the right thing to do. I'm giving up this and I'm taking to this. Satsanga tyag, I'm renouncing the material world and I'm taking to devotional service because this is the best thing I can do. So we make that conscious decision and we enter into a different lifestyle, and it has its challenges because we don't necessarily know what's going to come up out of the heart. We don't quite yet realize how deep our attachment and affection is for the material energy. And we don't realize how much we identify with the mind and the body as the self. And as we carry on with the process, we become more purified, and then we begin to realize that there's things which we considered ourselves, things we identified with, are actually not us, they're of the material world. So it can be a bit of a challenge. So sometimes we have to just remind ourselves that this is, I joined this movement. So the movement doesn't mean to say, basically movement means that we're taken to this process of Krishna consciousness. Not that simply we just kind of geographically situate ourselves in a temple and then that's it, I'm okay. Or we just make our house an altar or make a house a temple and think, okay, I've got pictures of Krishna up on the wall, I've got the books in the house, and somehow or another chant my japa while I'm thinking of so many other things, checking out my phone, etc. So I'm all right. No, movement means change of heart. Whatever our situation is, whether we're in household life, brahmachari, grihastha, sannyas, whatever our occupation may be, it's a change of heart that our intention now is aiming towards pleasing Krishna and learning how to do that. And this is the way by which we can refrain from karma bandhana, or getting entangled in the material world of committing sins and then either being punished or making some atonement. And as we've probably heard many times already from this chapter, that the atonement is as useful as the elephant taking the bath, who immediately comes out. Like sometimes people, they will make some confession on a Saturday evening and then they'll go out for the evening and commit so many sinful acts and then go to church the next day. Personally, I used to do that, but I used to wonder, why am I doing this? Surely they should have confession on a Sunday morning, because I've got more to confess on a Sunday morning than I have on a Saturday evening. No offence against any other religion or anything, but just to me, it was timing wasn't right. Either that or else they should have had church on the Sunday. But the idea is, of course, that before going to God, we want to purify ourselves, confess our sins. And of course, that's a good thing. We should take stock, some introspection. And this is also devotional practice, to share your mind, to reveal your mind. This confessional thing is like revealing your mind to a trusted authority who will give you direction, which will then free you from your entangled situation. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So if we sincerely want to be free from our sinful habits, and we have someone who can give us the proper direction, then success will be there. But if you have someone who doesn't want to really be free, they just want to dump their sins, just like sometimes people take initiation, dump their sins on the spiritual master and then carry on. So this is not a very good practice. Prabhupada says this is a very dangerous. The seventh offence against the holy name, to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name, Prabhupada says it's a very dangerous mentality. Because this type of mentality, then it's just treating Krishna like a doormat. And that's not cultivating a loving relationship with Krishna, it's just using Krishna. So therefore, devotional service is far away from just karma kanda. Very much the opposite. It's not, I do something so I should get something. Prabhupada refers to this as the work-reward system of the material world, in which we're still so accustomed to because we've been doing it for countless births, where we do something and we expect some result from it. Whereas devotional service means, and this is the art, is to do it without expecting a result back, without getting a pat in the back, without getting a big jai, without getting some glorification or recognition. And of course, in the conditional stage, it's not that we should become harsh with each other and not appreciate each other. So the thing is that we should be appreciating others, but they shouldn't be looking for it. They should be appreciating others. Everyone, if they share in that appreciation, looking at the good qualities of others, Prabhupada says the devotee thinks everyone else is a devotee, but I'm not. I'm just a fake. So this is humility. We're talking earlier on about Prabhupada's humility. And even Prabhupada, he was genuinely humble, that he wouldn't accept any credit, although what he did hadn't been done before and won't be done again, because you can't do something like that twice. It's been done. What he did, bringing this process of Krishna consciousness, changing people's lives, getting them to give up all the things which they loved doing, or they felt they did, then that's unparalleled. But still, Prabhupada wouldn't take any credit for himself. In fact, out of his humility, he'd say that all my students, all my disciples, his sons and daughters, the other ones who are doing everything, he's just coming at the fag end of his life. Finally, when there's nothing left, then I've come, and it's all by the mercy of my spiritual master. So he genuinely feels like that, but we never see him like that. That would be a great mistake. When the devotee is being humble, then it's a great mistake to take that humility as just being, oh yeah, you're useless. Yeah, you are useless, actually. If the devotee says, oh, I'm the... Of course, we have to be careful with that too, because sometimes people want to be the most humble. And this becomes a little bit of a competition. Oh, I'm more humble than you. Just like somebody catches a cold and they said, oh, I was up for 3 nights, and that was nothing, I was up for 4 nights, and that's nothing, I was up for 5 nights, and I was vomiting everywhere. You know, misery loves company, right? They try to compete even in their misery. We have to be supreme at something. And there was this example, actually. One devotee went to Prabhupada and says, oh, Srila Prabhupada, I'm your most fallen devotee. And Prabhupada says, you're the most nothing. You're just insignificant. So we try to take something, even their fallen condition, where we can get some importance from that I'm the most fallen. Nobody's more fallen than me. That's okay if we're actually thinking like that and privately we're praying to the Lord like that, but if we're trying to make a show of it, then that's not going to help us. But still, even though we may feel that we're fallen and we look at our past and think, oh, you know, I got into so many degraded things, embarrassing things or whatever, that's okay. That's in the past. Every saint had a past, every sinner has a future. And that can be the impetus for us to serve Krishna, to serve Krishna's devotees, and to appreciate the association of devotees, the value of Vaishnava Seva. Shishikod Nitani Mahaprasad. So therefore it's important that we try to develop good relationships with devotees, and it's not that necessarily, because we're all coming from different backgrounds, it's not necessarily in the material world that we would associate with each other. Sometimes we find devotees who are completely the opposite end of the scales, but Krishna will put them together to learn tolerance. And if we can tolerate each other, one way to learn to tolerate each other is to recognize that this person, you know, if you think you're having to tolerate somebody, just remember they're tolerating you. But also remember that this person has given up pursuing a life in the material world to come to Krishna consciousness. This is a very rare thing. And they may have some kind of things which irritate me or something like that about the character of the person. But they're in the process. Just like they say, I remember at school when we used to do sports, sometimes you'd play football or rugby or whatever. If it was wet, then you'd be all filthy muddy. And then they had these communal showers, you know, everybody was in the same place. And sometimes someone would say, look how filthy that one is. Well, okay, you may have done a few more sliding tackles and got more dirty, but you're in the process, you're going to get clean. And if the person who's complaining steps out the shower and they're still dirty and they're complaining about how dirty you are, you're going to get clean before they are. So the thing is, we may have some still unsavory qualities which we haven't yet given up. Each individual may have that. And as long as we stay in the process, but staying in the process properly means we're always trying to improve on our Krishna consciousness. Vaisheshika Prabhu coined this very nice phrase, ABS, always better service. So we may actually be doing the same thing all the time, but we try to do it with a better mood. We try to do it with better appreciation, deeper appreciation for each other. So this sinning and atoning, Prabhupada refers to here as being pointless. It's only has some point if your desire is just to continue it with that, because then you get some energy to enjoy your senses again once the slate is clean. Now I can go and enjoy again. Sometimes that happens. We're suffering, and sometimes we don't even realize we're suffering. We come to Krishna consciousness and our suffering starts to subside. And then we think, great, now I can go and enjoy again. My senses are very strong again. But we shouldn't make that mistake, because if we do that too often, then what happens is we start to doubt the process of Krishna consciousness. We think, oh, I've been doing this for ages and it's not working. But actually, have we been doing it? Have we been doing it properly? It's like if you keep running in and out the shower, we're thinking, oh, I'm not going back in there, I'm still dirty. So, and the wonderful thing is that there's so many devotees that we can associate with, which will help us. And we're all in the same boat. It's not easy to be a devotee in the material world, but Krishna looks very kindly upon devotees who are really trying to be a devotee despite the difficulties of being in this world. Yeah, and then it's mentioned also in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada talks about that for ones whose senses are engaged in Krishna's service, then their senses become no more dangerous than a serpent with broken fangs. So if you get a serpent with very dangerous bite, but its fangs are removed, then it's just laughable, it's a joke. So therefore, Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate, Krishna, who is the master of the senses, then we engage our senses in the service, Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate, in devotional service of Krishna, then our senses and our mind, they are no longer a source of danger for us. In fact, they are a source of purification. So the senses are the outlets of the mind. The mind comes up with some idea, generates some idea to enjoy, and we employ the senses to make it happen. Or the senses are also feeding into the mind. Now, if our mind becomes our greatest friend by absorption in Krishna consciousness, then the mind will start to give us ideas how we can serve better, how we can be more Krishna conscious, how we can utilize our time to bring in more Krishna consciousness into it. You know, we've got some time there, read some books, chant something, do some service, some Krishna conscious engagement. Then our mind starts to become our friend. And then when the mind comes up with ideas to serve Krishna, then the senses are employed in serving Krishna, then the mind becomes further purified, and then it likes it, and then it wants more service. And then it gradually increases to the point where it becomes spontaneous, where the mind has become so controlled by the devotional energy. But this control is not something out with, this is control by our own voluntary surrender. Prabhupada said that an intelligent person doesn't like to suffer, and Krishna says that an intelligent person should seek out the source of miseries, and one should refrain from engaging those things. So this is one side of it. And then the other side is that we should actively engage in devotional service. So simultaneously, we give up one thing and accept another. Not that we're giving up something and we're sitting around waiting on something happening. You know, some processes have systems of self-abnegation where they perform many austerities. And I remember Javik Prabhu was telling me he knew quite a lot about atonement from the Middle Ages. People used to do things like they'd find a hollow log and then get people to fill it up with stone. They'd go inside the hollow log, like say maybe you get a hollow tree, you go inside it and then you'd get people to fill it with stone. So you're basically trapped there and you just spend your life there. And this is like self-atonement, self-penance. But just imagine you've done that to yourself and then you've still got so many desires and you can't get out. It's are very harsh self-punishments. Sometimes people, they have like a little whip. Was it? I don't know if it was cat of nine tails, they used to call it. It was some kind of whip, and the self-flagellation, they whip themselves for their sins. It's a fact. And to some degree, this is what happens, is that sometimes people, they might not have a whip, they're punishing themselves like that, but so guilt and shame are two very different things. Would anyone like to explain the difference?
Shame is something which stays with you your whole life, overshadows you, and guilt is something that's going to be an impetus, a temporary thing.
Yes. So the shame thing means that we don't get free from it. This is a trick of mine also, that you can't get out of this. You've done this, that's you for the rest of your days. You're this. You identify with it. Guilt means, yes, I did this, but I'm not going to do that any longer. I don't want to identify with that any longer. And we can be ashamed of what we do, but at the same time, we're not going to let that stop us going forward. So recognition of our involvement in the material world, it doesn't have to be something which cripples us. Was it they say, paralysis by analysis? Too much introspection is not a good thing. A little introspection is good, but it has to be there to the degree which motivates us to go forward and do the positive thing, which is to engage in Krishna consciousness. If we're finding we're so much involved in our past that we can't go forward, then we need to stop thinking about the past. This is called lamenting. It's in the mode of ignorance. And it's not going to help us in devotional service. We want to be free from the mode of ignorance. Therefore, Krishna says, even if you're the most sinful of all sinners, which means nobody can say, oh, I'm too sinful, this process it won't work for me. Even if you're the most sinful of all sinners, when you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll become indifferent to all that has been seen, all that has been heard. So it's just like you fell into a pit of unmentionable substances, and then you realize, oh, I'm contaminated. You just get clean and you carry on. You don't go back in and say, no, I was so contaminated in the past, I better just go back into it. But this lust is so strong that the living entity can take any type of body and still find enjoyment in it. We can take body of a fly, where we are, our foodstuff is simply just eating unmentionables, regurgitating it, eating it again. And we still try to find some enjoyment in that. We have heavily conditioned ourselves to the point where we can accept the body of a pig. Even Lord Indra, wasn't it? He got himself into trouble. Sometimes Lord Indra is a bit mischievous and he gets cursed. Although he is a devotee as well. We see that at the Govardhan Leela. He is actually a devotee, but sometimes he forgets and he gets involved in some mischievous activities. And one time he got cursed to take, was it Indra who took birth as the hog? Yeah. And so he took birth as a hog, grew up from a little piglet to be a big hog, and he had his wife, hog piglets, little family of hogs, and he was happy as a pig in muck, as they say. And I think it was Lord Brahma came to him and says, now your time is up, the curse is over, come back to the heavenly kingdom, you've got great responsibilities there. He says, no, but how can I leave? I've got my responsibilities here, I have my wife, I have my children, we've got so much stool to clear up here. And we're just expecting a nice big shipment of hot stool, maybe the devotees are sitting in the prasadam room waiting on hot halava coming out of the kitchen. So the conditioning is such that when we get a certain type of body, then we accept those senses and we enjoy through those senses. But one who has a higher body looks down and thinks, that is not enjoyment. So Krishna, similarly, and the pure devotees are looking at us thinking, you think you're enjoying, but you're actually suffering. This is called Maya. We take our suffering to be enjoyment. And we do not know what is real enjoyment. We've forgotten it. We actually know it. It's within us. That real enjoyment is to be connected with Krishna. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. Rameti Krishna, and to enjoy through devotional service. The nature of the living entity is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge, and by making connection to Krishna through Bhakti Yoga, then we can experience that even in this lifetime. Okay, so we'll just stop there if anyone's got any questions or comments. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just heard Muhammad was talking another twist is if you think I don't want to feel guilty because this slows me down, so I'm just going to brush this aside. Then you start feeling bad because you're thinking, well, if I was a good person, I would feel guilty, and I don't feel guilty, so therefore I'm a bad person, and so then you feel guilty about not feeling guilty.
Yeah, this Maya is so tricky. Easy way out. And what's behind it is, do we want to be a devotee or do we not want to be a devotee? Are we looking for a way to escape Krishna's embrace? No, I'm too fallen, I can't be a devotee. That's what's behind it, isn't it? Find some way to escape, surrender to Krishna.
That's what Sri Prabhupada said, there's nothing like devotee here. One is devotee to themselves, and you should just carry on themselves.
Yes, this eternal life full of bliss of knowledge. The spiritual master, he's given that knowledge, and he doesn't accept any type of reason why we can't take to it. Just like when devotees were joining the temple, sometimes they'd say, oh, Prabhupada, I was this and I was that, and say, oh, it doesn't matter. Like one was, I had to go to jail. He says, that's okay. Krishna was born in the jail. And I was a drug dealer. I was also dealing drugs. Of course, Prabhupada wasn't a drug dealer. He was a pharmacist. Or he had a pharmaceutical company. But in other words, Prabhupada was saying, whatever you come up with, I'm not going to accept it as an excuse for you to not be a devotee. Doesn't matter what you've done now. It's before now. It's what you're going to do now that counts. And therefore, the biblical story of the prodigal son is there. So that I think everybody knows that story. I don't think I have to tell it. But essentially what's happening is that the one son has left the company of the father, and father's worried day and night what's happening with him. And then, even though he's been up to all sorts of nonsense, wasted the money it was given by the father, etc., when he comes back, and the father was so pleased to see him. Like he didn't have any, he didn't harbour any ill will, he didn't give him any blame or anything like that, he just was happy to see him back. And this story is there to say this is Krishna's position, that it doesn't matter where we've been, he knows who we are, he knows who we were before we entered the material world, and that we are still that person, and he's missing us. And therefore he keeps coming back to remind us personally, and to send his devotees to remind us, and the Shastra there, and the Sadhus there to remind us. Okay, anything else? Iskon Guru ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Tagore Premanande.